So the other day I attended an Oscar watching party at my friend's house. It was time to drop the NFL expert suit and become a cinema connoisseur for the night. So I filled my prediction sheets, and by the end of the day I realized that I might actually have to begin betting on like the weather or some random Vietnamese sports league. As usual, everyone began complaining about their favorite films not being nominated, myself included, with the slight difference that, I was actually right. Eventually, the two guys that actually attended film school began arguing about which movie was the biggest snob of all time. Guy 1 said it's obviously any movie made by Alfred Hitchcock, with the second one replying that it was actually Singing in the Rain. The debate went on for a while until, as with everything art-related, someone used the "it's impossible to get an objective answer when it comes to art," which one is false because art is not subjective, your taste is, and two, but what if it wasn't? So follow me in this journey to find the objective and unequivocally biggest snob of all time. A snob is defined by TV tropes as a work or person being denied a claim of a popular award that it seems to deserve, through action malicious, unintentional, overly reactionary, out of touch, or anti-populist on the part of the award voters. Okay, so now that we know what a snob is, how do we find the biggest one of all time? Well, my plan was simple. Get a list of all the Best Picture winners with their ratings, get a list of the highest rated films of each year, compare the highest rated films with the Oscar winners and analyze the discrepancy in order to find the biggest Best Picture snob of all time. The first step was to decide what type of rating system I would use in order to compare the movies. I know there are like 1,000 movie rating systems out there, 5 stars, 2 thumbs up, Rotten or Fresh, the Jeremy Jahns method, or whatever the unwashed masses use at Letterboxd, but in the end, we all know that the best rating system is the one that validates our own personal preferences. While looking for some data, I found this IMDb list of all the Academy Award nominees for Best Picture that included both their IMDb and Metacritic ratings, so I just went with these two metrics. The way the IMDb rating system works is pretty simple. IMDb registered users can cast a vote from 1 to 10 on every released title in the database. Individual votes are then aggregated and summarized as a single IMDb rating, visible on the title's main page. By release title, we mean that the movie or TV show must have been publicly shown at least once, including festival screenings. Users can update their votes as often as they like, but any new vote on the same title will override the previous one, so it is one vote per title per user. This system is entirely based on the user's personal preferences, which is why they also include the Metacritic system in order to give the users a variety of opinions. The Metascore, on the other hand, is a weighted average of reviews from top critics and publications for a given movie. The staff goes through the reviews of a given movie and will take the score given by the critic and compare it to a 0 to 100 point scale. If the review does not contain a score, the staff assigns one based on the general impression given by the review. The weighted average part means that the critic's prestige and overall quality of reviews is taken into consideration when determining the final Metascore, which makes some publications count more than others. The site also provides a snippet from each review, and hyperlinks to its source, where a color of green, yellow, or red summarizes the critic's review. In order to get the data, I opened a can of beautiful soup to scrape the information from the site and ended up with a CSV file that looks something like this. The dataset only goes back to 1950, the reason for this is because the Best Picture category has gone through some changes through time. And yes, I could have scraped an extra 20 years worth of films, but this video was already taking so long, so 74 years of data should be more than enough. I don't want to hear anyone complaining. With the data of all the nominees in hand, we can begin to visualize some interesting facts about these films. Here we can see a word cloud, showcasing the various genres represented among the nominees. Most notably, drama emerges as the most prevalent genre, appearing 387 times on the nominated films, making it the safest bet for anyone attempting to compete at the Oscars. You made a film that is a romantic biographical drama? Yes please. You made an animated film noir horror opera prima? Well, good luck at the Razzies. Do you still got writer's block? Here's a word cloud generated with a description of all the nominees, so grab your pencil and start writing a story about a young American woman who wants to start a family and become a wife, but in order to do so she needs to find a man but falls in love with two. Make the story take place in New York, England or Germany during your favorite world conflict and it's money in the bank. They say size doesn't matter, but is it true? Lucky for you, dear viewer, the answer is no, as long as you can get past the 120-minute mark. But let's be honest, you're not attending the Oscars just for the fancy catering. You want to get up there and give a rushed speech, thanking your family or calling out whatever political conflict you read about that morning. So what movie rating should you be aiming at in order to win the big prize? According to the data, you would need on average an IMDb rating of 8 in order to win the Oscar, with The Godfather holding the title as the best ranked winner and Tom Jones somehow winning the Oscar with a rating of 6.4. How about Metascore? In terms of Metascore, you will still need at least 85 in your Metascore in order to win the Oscar, with once again The Godfather holding the highest Metascore with a perfect 100 and Sound of Music being considered the worst Best Picture winner. So now you know where the bar is at. The Academy Awards has a category called Best Picture, but does the Best Picture in a year always win this award? And if not, how often does this happen? In order to answer this question, we need to find the highest rated films of every year and compare its ratings to the Best Picture winner. Lucky for me, I found another IMDb list containing the highest ranked films per year, with the only problem being that it stops at 2012. In order to complete the list, I went to Metacritic to find the highest rated films for each year from 2012 to 2023. Now, full disclosure, I know that this page was made by far better engineers than me, but what in God's name is this data filter? Like, do you know how hard it is to search for films in the same year? Anyway, I used this devilish filter to find the movies, get their info on IMDb, and complete the dataset. With this information in hand, we can begin to compare the Best Picture winners with the highest rated films of each year. Here's a graph that compares the IMDb rating of the Best Picture winners against the highest IMDb rated films. As we can see, the highest rated film generally beats the Oscar winner. But let's try to answer some other questions. Which year has the biggest discrepancy between the Oscar and the highest rated films? How many times the Oscar winner has beaten the highest rated films, and how many times the highest rated film has beaten the Oscar winner for more than 1 point? According to the IMDb ratings, the biggest discrepancy took place in 1963 when Tom Jones won with a Metascore of 6.4 against High and Low, remember this movie for later, with a score of 8.4. How many times the Oscar winner has beaten the highest rated film? 6 times, in 2023, 2022, 2018, 2006, 2000 and 1984, with 2018 being a notable case since no one thought Green Book should have or would have won. How many times the highest rated film has beaten the Oscar winner for more than 1 point? 12 times, with the most notable cases being 1952 with Singing in the Rain losing to The Greatest Show on Earth, a movie that is regarded as one of the worst winners of all time, and The Dark Knight losing to Slumdog Millionaire in 2012. How many times was the highest rated film awarded an Oscar? 11 times, with the most recent one being Parasite winning in 2019. In this list we can also find 2003 The Return of the King, 2007 No Country for Old Men, and The Godfather Parts 1 and 2. If we run the same exercise with the Metascore data instead, we get that the biggest discrepancy took place in 2018 when the Oscar went to Green Book with a score of 69 instead of Rome with a score of 96. This is interesting because we can see the discrepancy between the two metrics. The IMDb rating, which is more user-oriented, has Green Book with a higher rating than Rome, but Metacritic, which is a more critic-oriented one, has Rome well above Green Book. This might be the result of Rome not being that friendly to general audiences, being an Italian neo-realism-inspired black and white movie set in the 1960s Mexico City, and reflects the way accessibility can affect the people's perception of a film. In general, you can see how popular films have a higher IMDb score and the more artsy films have a higher Metascore, which is a reflection of how each metric works. Now let's go back to what we were doing. How many times the Oscar winner has beaten the highest rated films? 9 times, with the most notable one being Lawrence of Arabia winning with a perfect 100. How many times the highest rated film has beaten the Oscar winner for more than 10 points? 18 times. And finally, how many times the highest Metacritic rated film was awarded the Oscar? 11 times. And as you can see, the list is identical from the IMDb one. So with all this in mind, there is only one question left to answer. It really depends on how you slice it. I created a new table so it would be easier to visualize and filter all the highest ranked films that did not got nominated for Best Picture, and here it is. If we filter by IMDb rating, the biggest snub would be 2008 Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight, with an IMDb rating of 9. If we use the Metascore metric, Alfred Hitchcock's 1958 masterpiece Vertigo would be number 1 with a Metascore of 100, with Singing in the Rain in second place and Akira Kurosawa's legendary Seven Samurai in third, followed by two of the finest films by Alfred Hitchcock in North by Northwest and Psycho. I also created an overall rating that combines both metrics into a single one in an attempt to blend both the general public and the critics' opinions of the films. However, the results pretty much remain the same, with Singing in the Rain, Seven Samurai and Alfred Hitchcock coming on top as the clear victims of snobism. At this point, you could pick any of these films and you could claim that it is the biggest snub of all time, since they all perfectly represent what being snubbed is. Films like The Dark Knight, Vertigo, or Psycho that were looked down upon for being considered lesser genres. Masterpieces that time and audiences have put in the right place, such as Singing in the Rain, or foreign films that get discarded simply because of a language barrier. All of these films embody that. But just because your movie wasn't nominated for Best Film doesn't mean that it got absolutely no love at the Oscars. I added an extra column that contains all the nominations that this movie received. Seven Samurai was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Art Direction and Best Costume Design. The Dark Knight got 5 nominations, winning on the Best Performance by an Actor in a Supporting Role thanks to Heath Ledger's iconic performance. Singing in the Rain got 2 nominations but failed to win in the Best Music category, which is ironic since Singing in the Rain is considered as one of the best musicals of all time. Despite the Academy's disdain towards Alfred Hitchcock, his 3 films got a grand total of 9 nominations, one of which was a nomination for Best Director for the film Psycho. So, in order to truly find the biggest snub of all time, we need to find the movie with the highest overall rating, that got 0 nominations at the Oscars. If we take a look at the list, we find that the top 3 films that meet this criteria are foreign films, so we're gonna give an honorable mention to the biggest American snub of all time. With an overall rating of 82, that honor goes to 1992 Quentin Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. And In the Circuit Darling that just failed to impress the voters at the Oscars. Now, for the moment we've all been waiting for. Coming in third place with an overall score of 87, we have Akira Kurosawa's 1963 High and Low. A film that, if you remember, according to the IMDb rating, had the biggest discrepancy in rating with the Best Picture winner, Tom Jones. Now, I'll be honest with you, there is a tie for the first place and the tiebreaker might seem a bit arbitrary, so feel free to disagree with me and take the next movie as a winner. In second place with an overall rating of 89, we have a 1955 French film noir darling, Rafifi. A movie that, according to the Criterion Collection, is the ultimately heist movie. Guess someone has never seen Tower Heist, huh? Now, it's time to finally put an end to the debate of the biggest snub of all time and give a definitive answer, not based on feelings, vibes, arbitrary ratings, or film studies PhDs, but in science and numbers. The absolute, unequivocally, and biggest snub of all time, with an overall score of 89, is... Sergio Leone's 1966 masterpiece, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A film that should be the textbook definition of getting snubbed. In its original review, Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times said that the movie should have been called The Bad, the Dull, and the Interminable. This reflected the sentiment of the critics at the time who were uncomfortable with the violence displayed on the film, looking down upon the spaghetti western genre. Even legendary critic Roger Ebert, who included the film in his list of great movies, admitted that in his original review he had described a 4-star movie but only gave it 3 stars, perhaps because it wasn't a spaghetti western and so could not be art. Despite Ennio Morricone composing one of the most iconic soundtracks of all time and creating the sounds that many generations have come to associate with the Old West, he would have to wait until 2016 to win an Oscar for his work in The Hateful Eight. Despite the movie being considered a visual storytelling masterpiece, Sergio Leone would go on to win none. Since those days, the film has steadily gained appreciation and recognition from audiences and critics alike. Its groundbreaking cinematography, innovating storytelling, and iconic characters had influenced countless filmmakers and shaped the Western genre for generations to come. Inspiring people like Letterboxd user Janava that writes, "This movie inspired me to smoke cigars." Or famous visionary director Quentin Tarantino, who has called it the best directed film of all time and the greatest achievement in the history of cinema. Not bad, huh? All these films serve as a reminder that greatness transcends awards, finding its true validation in the hearts and minds of audiences all around the world.